Hello, welcome to Type to Learn 4. First of all, there are a few different types of Type to Learn 4 that you can have. The first type is called our web-enabled version of Type to Learn 4, which still involves a download of the actual software program of Type to Learn 4 to reside on each of your clients. However, the web-enabled version has a few differences to it. The first thing is it allows take-home rights, so your students can go home and download the Type to Learn 4 program from our website and actually access their account from home because all of their user data is stored on our servers. You also have access to this teacher portal, so your teachers can access this teacher.ttl4.com portal through any device that has internet access. The only thing that we do caution on is it has a few compatibility issues with Internet Explorer. So if you are going to use Internet Explorer with the teacher portal, please be sure to switch into compatibility mode. So I'll log into the actual portal itself. The other version that we do have is our network version, which is just like the web-enabled version except for you don't get this teacher portal because all of your student data is stored on your servers, as well as you do not get the take-home rights, again because all of your student data is stored on your server and not ours. So you'll just log into your account. Once you're logged into your teacher account, you will see your management portal, and I'll show you the actual management portal through the site itself, through the program itself. It is the exact same thing. The only difference is the format looks as if it's in the program formatting. We'll always default to user management. User management is where you can add and edit your students and just manage all of the users that are currently within your program. Through the actual program itself, this print list button will be an import students button. So you can import a mass list of students through either a CSV file or a text file. If you do have students that add throughout the year, you can click Create Student. You can add their first name, last name, username, which has to be unique, and a password. If one of your students changes a last name or forgets their password, you can highlight them, click Edit Student, and you can modify their password, their last name, and their first name. Their username is the only thing that you will not be able to modify within the program. Once you choose their username, that will be their username for the duration of the program. You also have the ability to modify just different things for your entire class. You can hold the Shift key down and it will select everyone, or as you saw before, I was holding the Control key down and you can select several students without having to select everyone in a row. You can click the Promote Grade button, which will promote all of your students that you've highlighted up one grade. You can also use the Clear Scores button, which will clear all of their current data and start them fresh from square one. You can actually go in to a student's account that has completed the program and clear their scores and have them start fresh, working to increase their word per minute. So you'll want to set their word per minute and accuracy goals higher than what they were currently. You also have the ability to add teachers into your account, so you can just change it to all teachers, and just like your students, you'll add your teachers into the program. Class management is going to be really important for you as a teacher, as this is where you can set up all of your classes and manage your students. So you'll find your name, and then this Create New Class button will come live. So you'll click Create New Class. You'll name your class, select the grade, and you'll want to leave this semester alone. So leave that as whatever it says. Once you've created your class, it will populate down here in your class list. To add students to your class, you'll highlight the class period that you want them to go into, highlight the student that you would like, and then click Add to Class. Now you'll probably have hundreds or thousands of students to search through, so you can narrow your search fields by displaying only a certain grade. So if you were a 4th grade teacher, you can display all of your 4th grade students, as well as you can search for a student by their name. So you can start typing their name, and they'll pop up with either their first name or their last name. You can highlight that, and they will be highlighted. If you have multiple students that you would like to add to that class, Again, you can hold the Shift key down or the Control key, and you can add multiple students to a class period. Let's say one of your students moves classes, as always happens at the beginning of the year. You can highlight that specific student, click Move Student, and you can either move them from class period to class period within your specific account, or if you were in an admin account, you can even move them teacher to teacher. So I can move them to, the Sunburst teacher class, and they will move to that other teacher's class. You can also have the same student in multiple teachers' classes. So if Dan was in Teacher Sunburst as well as in my account, I could have him in both. If the same thing happens where your student were to leave your class, you can easily click Remove Student and will remove them from your class without affecting their data within the program. You'll always want to save your changes before navigating away. User Options is the next tab that we'll cover. A few things that you can do here. You can change accounts for a single student. You can select your entire school if you would like, or you can go to your teacher list view and you can select your class. So you can modify changes for an entire class. You'll want to select your class number or name that you're modifying it for, and then it will highlight all of your students underneath that specific class, and you can make modifications for that entire class. But I'll do it from the student view. If you select multiple students at a single time and you see anything pop up in red, not a bad thing, just means that your students have different settings for that particular area. So it may mean that all of my students are not intermediate students. It may mean that some of them are in the K to 2 or the 7 to 12 range. So we'll just go through showing you how to modify a single student, but again, you can modify for an entire class or your entire school if you would like. Quick settings will just set the program at our default settings for that specific grade level. But then you can go through and you can modify the program to fit your students' needs and your class needs. Audio. There's a couple different things you can do. It's always defaulted to have music and instructions on, but again, you can turn those off by just unchecking it. Vocabulary level is going to be the words that your students see throughout the program. So these are the words that we're asking your students to type. You can change the vocabulary level to whatever is age appropriate for your students. We've got 3 different vocabulary level designs, a K to 2, a 3 to 6, and a 7 to 12. So if you have a student who is in 3rd grade but still reading at a 2nd grade reading level, you can modify those vocab words that they're going to be receiving. Design levels, we've got 2 of them, a K to 2 design level and then a 3 to 12 design level. And then ergonomic breaks are stretch breaks that you can allow for your students, or you can disable them. If you allow them, after the certain amount of time, a screen will pop up and say it's time for a stretch break, and it will lead your student in that duration of a stretch break. Again, you can choose to disable these if you would like. Lessons. There's a bunch of different modifications you can make under the Lessons tab. The first one is you can prevent your students from going past a certain lesson. So if you want all of your students to work at the same pace, you can select whichever lesson or assessment you want them to be able to work up to. Once they reach that lesson or assessment, so if I chose Assessment 1, once they reach Assessment 1, they'll be able to go back and review any lesson prior, but they won't be able to move on until I open up more lessons for them. Most of our teachers that we work with disable this, as they want their students to work at their own pace. Game breaks are just like ergonomic breaks. Again, you can choose to disable them or set them at every few minutes intervals. Custom content is the information that you add into the program. So if you want to add a vocabulary list for your students to type, you can add that into the program. Security check is the second step of every lesson that your students will see. For the security check, they'll have to type about 15 to 20 words of review that they've already learned, and it's required for them to type 100% accuracy. So if they type a wrong key, they will be pushed back to the beginning of that security check, and they'll have to complete those 15 to 20 words with 100% accuracy before they can move on. This does cause some frustration with some of our younger students, so for the younger students, we do suggest to allow errors. But again, you can choose to have it at 100% accuracy if you want. Reference hand supports are found throughout the program if you choose to have them. Otherwise, you can turn them off. The reference hand supports are only found within the actual lesson itself, and then they're taken away for the activities. The activities, they're only provided a reference keyboard, and then the assessments and the final challenge, which we treat like the quiz, there is no reference available for your students. Allow students to skip to the final challenge is a default that is on. If you allow your students to skip to the final challenge, like I said, we treat that like our quiz. Your students will be able to move directly to that quiz, and if they score a high enough word per minute or accuracy, they will be able to move on to the next lesson without having actually taken that initial lesson. So if you want them to move sequentially throughout the program by taking the lesson, then the activities, and then that quiz, you'll want to disable that. Younger lessons A and B are for our younger K-2 students, and they really just give your students an orientation to the keyboard. So it starts with the letter A, moves alphabetically throughout the keyboard, and it just shows your students where the keys are, not necessarily which finger to type that specific key with. 29 and 30 involve the numeric keypad. So if you're using a laptop that does not have a numeric keypad, you'll want to disable that. This last part down here, manually set goals for your students, is where your students' word per minute and accuracy goals will lie. A few things here. If you want to, you can go in and manually change these and set a goal for your students based on what you think their word per minute and accuracy goals should be. You can use their grade-specific goals, which are goals that we have determined for the K-2 range, the 3 to 6 range, and then the 7 to 12 range. Or you can use their assessment goals. If you use their assessment goals, the program will set their word per minute and accuracy goals based on their achievement level. Activities are the next tab. You can allow these activities at any point in time. I generally suggest after a lesson is complete, simply because it really reinforces what your students have learned in that initial lesson. A couple things that you can do with these activities. You can have them required, optional, or turn them off. Big Ideas is one of our keyboarding activities that involves right hand and left hand coordination, and it's one of our 2 timed activities. Drone Control is our other timed activity that works to increase your students' word per minute. Reconnect involves the shift key, so it does not come into effect until lesson 6. Dig This has your students typing to a smooth pace. And then Message Master involves dictation, and it's broken up into 3 different parts. The first third of the program, your students will see what they need to type. The second third of the program, they'll only hear what they need to type. And then the last third of the program, they'll be given a verbal word prompt that they need to respond to. And it could be anything like, what did you do this afternoon? And they'll need to respond in either sentence form or paragraph form based on their age level. Assessments. A couple of different assessments that we have. Our pretest is our diagnostic assessment, and it is defaulted to be on. You can make it required, optional, or you can turn it off. Our pretest does a few things. The first thing it does is it sets your students' word per minute and accuracy goals based on their ability level, as well as sets them into the appropriate lesson for their skill set. So you may have some students starting at lesson 5, and you may have others starting at lesson 1. For your younger students, so your K-2, or your students who are new to keyboarding, we do suggest to turn the pretest off, as it can be frustrating for students who have no orientation to a keyboard whatsoever. We do have formative assessments found throughout the program. There are 6 of them. Again, you can choose to have them on or turn them off. If you have them on, you have a couple of options. You can allow the backspace, you can allow pause, and you can choose a time limit. If you choose to disable that time limit, they'll have to type the entire assessment, which can range from a paragraph to a few pages based on their age level. The other thing that is a default within the program is to enable automatic goal adjustment. So if you leave this on, it means that your students, every time they take an assessment, if they score higher than their current word per minute and accuracy goals, then their new goals will be adjusted to how they just achieved. So the program will grow with your students. And the last thing we have is accessibility. Found within accessibility is an ESL modification. You can adjust font size as well as you can adjust for your visually impaired students. All of these modifications are rollover buttons unless if you choose to play audio with those rollover buttons. The last thing you can have play around with in the management portal are the student reports. And with student reports, again, you can generate things for your entire school, or your class, or a single student. Status report is one that I suggest you generate for either an entire school or a class, or multiple students. It will just give you a representation of exactly where your students are at within the program. So it'll show you the current lesson that they're on, their word per minute and accuracy goals versus their actual, same thing with their accuracy. The only thing here is if you ever see NA under word per minute, it generally means that they haven't actually completed that specific lesson yet, but that's where they're currently at. The next one that we'll show you is a detailed report. And the detailed report generates quite a bit of data, so I suggest you generate this for the individual student. It defaults to average score, but you can show all of the scores, so every single time that they've logged in and taken a specific lesson or an activity. It will show you their word per minute and accuracy for their lesson, the final challenge, which we treat like that quiz, and all of the activities. If you scroll down, you'll see every time they've logged into that specific lesson. So it gives you a really good understanding of how they're utilizing their class periods. So you can see here, lesson 2, all Jane Doe did was play around on drone control. So that's an indication that the only thing she did that class period was play an activity. And then it's also an indication that she may be struggling to meet her word per minute and accuracy goals. So then I would probably go in and view exactly what her current goals are and make sure that she is within that achievable range. The other thing that you can do with a detailed report is if you see a word per minute and accuracy score for that particular lesson, you can highlight that lesson and generate an error report. And by generating an error report, you're going to generate a graphic representation of how they did during that specific lesson. So it will show you every keystroke that was in that specific lesson, as well as how frequently they were given that keystroke and how well they achieved. You can also drill that down to the specific finger, which will give you a better representation of which finger they may be struggling with. All of these reports, if you're using this teacher portal for the web-enabled version, you can print right from here. If you're using the network version or if you're using the actual program itself, this print report will be save report, so you'll have to save it first before you can print. The next report we have is an assessment report. And the assessment report just shows you how your students have been doing on the assessments. So it'll show you the date they logged in, how long they took, and their accuracy and their word per minute. Adjusted word per minute would be how they scored if they had 100% accuracy. And the last report that we have is called a narrative report. Sometimes we call it the parent report, simply because it's a great report to send home to mom and dad. It gives you a verbalization of exactly how your students are doing throughout the program. So it will show you which lesson they're currently on and the keys that that lesson covers, as well as their current goals. It will also show you if they took the pretest, which lesson that they started at, and then it will again give you their goals for their assessments and how they've been achieving within those assessments. So that is the teacher portal itself. I will log into the actual software program that sits on your computer that your students have to log into. So your students or you will log in with your username and your password. Once they log in or you log in, you'll be given a little background of what's going on. For your teacher, you can definitely click through this so you don't have to listen to that every time you log in. This is a teacher account, but the student account is going to look the exact same. The only difference is this management button is going to be a reports button, and your students will have access to their reports. So this management button is that management portal that we were just in, just found in the actual program itself. Like I said before, you do have the ability to import students, and again, you have to do it through this actual program. So you'll click import students, It will show you exactly where you'll need to save your CSV or text file. Once it's saved there, you can highlight that, click open, and it will import your entire list of students. The other thing you can do through the actual program itself is actually create your custom content. So to create custom content, you can click New. You can name your package. So you can name it anything that you would like. I'll just name it 411. And then you can go through and you can put in your vocabulary list. You can put in a quiz that you want your students to take at the beginning of the year and again at the end of the year to determine, their typing ability and see how they've improved. Once you generate the content that you want found within the program, you'll select which lesson you want it to go into. And I put it into lesson 1, and then you'll click Save Changes. You can always hit delete at any point in time. The other thing to caution you on is that you're going to want to make sure that your students have learned those specific keystrokes before you put it in that specific lesson. So my vocabulary list that I just entered in lesson 1 may be really difficult for my students because all my students are going to learn in lesson 1 are the F and J keys. So I would want to take a look at the scope and sequence and make sure that I'm putting that vocabulary list or that specific typing quiz into an appropriate lesson. And again, you'll want to save your changes before you navigate away. A few things about the Type to Learn 4 navigation. You as a teacher have the ability to cycle through any specific lesson, so you can go through and take that specific lesson and see exactly what your students are going to be receiving. Your students only have the ability to cycle through the lessons that they've achieved. So if lesson 6 is the last lesson I achieved, if I hit next, I will go back to either lesson A or lesson 1. Few things in terms of the designation within the program. A white check mark means that that particular lesson or activity has not been achieved yet. So it's required by my teacher, and I need to take it and pass it in order to move on. A green check mark means that that particular lesson was passed successfully, and then a red X means that either there's no specific content there or my teacher has limited access to that content. For your students, they'll just click Begin once they log in. So if I had taken the pretest and it set me at lesson 6, I would just click Begin. If I was starting out at lesson 1, again, I would click Begin. Once I click Begin, I will always receive a hands-on-the-home row reminder. Both I can read it and I will also hear it auditorially. On the left-hand side, I will have my word per minute and accuracy goal shown to me. And then on my right-hand side, I will get a little bit of positive reinforcement with my medallion. So my medallion will start out completely blank. As I move throughout the program, it will fill in with color, as well as I will receive a rank. As I move throughout the program, my rank will change and increase. For the lesson itself, your students will have these reference hand supports. So if they type a wrong key, it will prompt them with the correct key that they need to type. Or if they wait too long, again, it will prompt them with which finger they need to type that key with. It will start out with just a review of the letters that they've learned, move into that security check, which again is a review of words that they've learned to type, and then it will move into integration of new letters and new words. You'll always see how many steps that you still have to go through. If, however, you see that it bumps up a certain amount of steps, it means that you're being provided remediation. The little door is the home key. These are the activities that you have found throughout the program. Again, Big Ideas focuses on right-hand and left-hand coordination. Dig This works to have your students type to a smooth cadence. Drone Control increases their word per minute. Message Master, it works with dictation. And then Reconnect involves the shift key. If you click into the actual activity itself, again, you can click through all of these animations or you can let it play. It will always give you directions So these are really important for your students to listen to or to read as they're progressing through the lessons. It may ask them to do something a little bit differently, especially once they reach the arrow keys. This is actually a fast account, so the bubbles are going to be moving at the speed of the word per minute. If I was at a younger account, it would be a lot slower pace, as well as not as difficult of words. You'll notice that the reference hand supports have been taken away, but in the left-hand corner, I'm still given a reference keyboard as to what I'm supposed to do. That's just a general idea of the activities. A final challenge is going to be one of our assessments. Again, it's like our quiz and what determines whether or not your student can move on to the next lesson. So again, it will give them their word per minute and accuracy goals, as well as their current ranking. And it will just be a review of everything that they've learned thus far. Except for they will not have any references. So those reference hand supports, as well as the reference keyboard, will be taken away for these. The last thing we'll go into is an actual assessment. The assessments have no activities and no final challenge associated with them, and they're just like the final challenge, except for if you allow the pause key, your students have ability to reach the pause key, and it will be a lot more of sentences and paragraphs rather than quick word blends and quick letter blends. So if your students were in the actual assessment and they had a question for you, they could hit the pause key. If they utilize the pause key, it will still show them what they need to type, so they can look down on their keyboard. So that may be something to take into consideration with how you want to run your classroom. The last thing I'll show you is your students do have the ability to take a look at their options. So they can change their avatar from a girl to a boy if they want. They can change their hand color, as well as adjust their volume. And then they have the ability to change their access medallion. So they can cycle through and change that medallion if they choose. They also have a help function found throughout the program with this call agent, and it will show them exactly what each key does and what everything is. You can read it, or there's the audio if you click on the audio. So that is essentially Type to Learn 4. I hope you've learned a lot. If you do have additional questions, we are always here Monday through Friday to answer any questions for you. Our phone number is 800-321-7511. Again, that's 800-321-7511. Or you can reach us at support@sunburst.com. Again, that's support@sunburst.com. Thanks so much, and enjoy Type to Learn 4.